Buenos dias, buenas tardes, y buenas noches, bonjour, bonsoir, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you may be. Jay Slater case. And as I promised, I'm going to focus this weekend on fighting back against the lies, the fabrications, the absolutely malicious, malicious and attacking and accusing content from the accident group. I like to do this because it shows you if these people are prepared to make up absolute shite out of nowhere, just get it from, the recesses of their dark mind and put it out there on the internet. If they're prepared to do that about me and other people and my followers, our subscribers, our community, then it should be no surprise that the conclusion is they do the same about the Jay Slater case, that they've fabricated, they've come up with all of this shite just to convince people that something could be true when they know it isn't. Now, the example I want to choose today is, first of all, let me tell you the story of how I became involved with student travel while I was teaching at Tambearly School in the Bahamas. When I interviewed for that position, the head of school, Mrs. Langford, she said, by the way, apart from your teaching duties, if you're employed here, we need someone to either take over the technology and the implementation of technology in information technology in the classroom, yeah, of the whole school. It's not a big school, it's a small private school. Or we need someone to head the travel program because we're looking at enhancing some of the travel opportunities for our students to go to other islands in the Bahamas. And the big one, we've never done this before, is someone to lead a group to travel to Europe. Now, not surprisingly, I said to Mrs. Langford, I am not the person to be in charge of anything to do with technology. So that role, if you want someone to do that, is not me. That's out of it. I said, on the other hand, I do have considerable experience traveling and traveling with groups and organizing that kind of thing. I would have no problem with that whatsoever. In fact, I would volunteer for that. That is something I would really love to do. That's the background to how I got involved with organizing student travel at Tambearly School in the Bahamas. There was one sticking point because Mrs. Langford said, okay, I think we have enough sponsors and backers, alumni that will donate to this cause. We can talk about the travel program. And I stopped her right there. I said, no way. I said, I'm sorry. That's not my way of doing it. I said, if we're going to institute any kind of travel program, it's just one of my things. I insist that the people that are traveling actually earn their airfare and their hotel stay. I don't think travel is one of those pleasures that's just handed down from some rich sponsor. I would set up a whole program, a travel program, and the travel program would start with this group of people here. These students want to travel to Portugal, Spain, and France, and to cover the costs, they are going to earn it, whether it be from bake sales or whatever initiative, earning little bits and pieces at school, so that over time they can amass enough for their trip. And Mrs. Langford actually said, I think that is a good idea. It takes even more organization. Can you do it? And I said, yeah, I will devote the time needed to set up whatever money earning opportunities there are for these students so they can actually say they have earned, not been given, they have earned their trip to Europe or the other islands of the Bahamas. And this worked phenomenally well, I'm glad to say. You've got students that hadn't really worked in their life, but they were told if you're going to go on this trip, you have to provide your own funds. And in order to do that, you have to visibly be seen working. So, for example, the Greek kid would make a moussaka. I guess his mum probably made it, brought it to the Friday food sale, and yeah, I mean that was his way of earning some money every week until the trip. So you know how this works. Schools have fundraising activities, but I mean, I think all their spending money probably did come from mum and dad. We could proudly say every penny that went towards the airfare and the hotel accommodation, that was indeed earned by those kids. Mrs. Langford, my boss, was very pleased with that. So the first, and it turned out to be the only European trip that I headed up for the school, only had four students. Like I said, it's a very small private school. And that was the senior school. So these are 15, 16-year-old kids. There are only four of them. We had three girls and we had one boy. The one boy was accompanied by both his parents. He was slightly special needs, ADHD type. And the three girls, they had their mothers all come. Normally in the Bahamas, that's how it works. When there's a school trip organized, in my experience, it's very rare that the kids just go with one teacher. That's just not how they travel. There is someone from the family that goes with them, even through their teenage years until they go to college. They tend to be traveling with someone in the family. So that was totally normal. On top of that, Mrs. Smith came, and the trip was Lisbon, and then Madrid, and then Barcelona, and then Paris. Um, so, like I say, when Ivor's out there talking about this school trip, it was totally accompanied. And like I say, there were at least one parent for every kid, all four of them that were on that trip, plus Mrs. Smith, plus me. So I don't know if after I left anyone continued that program. I think I heard that someone was taking the equivalent trip to the US, but not to Europe. I might have been the only one that ever organized a Europe trip for those kids. Were they appreciative? Unbelievably so. Because you've got to imagine these kids are studying French or Spanish in the classroom. They never actually have an opportunity unless they go to, I don't know. Well, actually, if they go to Miami, they probably could use Spanish quite readily. But Bahamians don't tend to travel to many other parts in the Caribbean. They don't tend to use any foreign language they've learned that much. So yes, they were incredibly grateful. The parents were very, very grateful. Everything went well. Very, very proud of having instituted, even if no one took over from that first trip, the Tambearly School European summer trip. That wasn't the only one that I organised, though. The other important aspect that Mrs. Langford wanted me to do was to try to get not a 10-day trip, but a long weekend trip for some of the younger students to go to other islands in the Bahamas. There are 15 inhabited island or island groups in the Bahamas, and you'd be surprised how many Bahamians only know New Providence, where the capital Nassau is, plus maybe their home island. They actually don't know, they've never been to, they have no experience in any of the other islands that we call the family islands. And Mrs. Langford said if you could do that with the juniors, just take them for a long weekend to maybe Andros, maybe Eleuthera, maybe San Salvador, places like that, that would be fantastic. That too was run on the same operation. We had our bake sales and raffles and Lord knows what to raise the money. It didn't cost as much, obviously, because we're talking about 2 nights accommodation within the Bahamas. And one of the surprising things was these rather affluent kids had never been on the mailboat. The mailboat is the basic, passenger ferry, if you like, that goes across the seas. If you don't know the Bahamas, the distances between the islands are quite enormous. People often think the Bahamas, you can stand on one island and you can see all the other islands. No, no. The Bahamas covers a very, very long territory. It's an archipelago. So when all these kids were told, these little kids were told, no, no, we're not flying there. We're going to go on the mailboat. They're like, the mailboat? No one travels on the mailboat. I'm like, well, that's what we're going to do. If the mailboat isn't your thing, then maybe don't come on the trip. I don't know what their fear was. Maybe their fear was that you fall overboard and the shark gets you. Yes, Chris Pennington, I'd better point that out. There really are sharks in the Bahamian waters, especially when you're going from New Providence to Andros, as opposed to the hammerhead sharks that don't actually exist off the Juan Lopez beach. But anyway, I don't know what the fear was, but these kids were like, well, really going on the mailboat? And it turned out after the trip, when we flew back, we went to Andros, for example, on the mailboat, we flew back on Western Air. They were like, can't we go back on the mailboat? I was like, there we go. Something's changed in your life. You suddenly realize that the easiest way to get somewhere isn't always the best way to get somewhere. Little things like that, these kids picked up on, and everything went very well. Now, for the junior school kids, it was the same thing. No, it wasn't the same thing. For the junior school kids, we had one parent that came with those junior school kids and Mrs. Smith and myself. So there were actually only 3 adults on that. But I think, again, there were only 10 kids in total. And one of the kids had family on the island of Andros. And I believe when we went to Long Island, same thing. So there was like one of the kids' family was there to meet us and take care of a lot of the bits and pieces. That is the reality. I'll just go through the whole list. So we had the senior school trip to Europe. We had a senior school trip to Long Island. We had the junior school trip to Andros and to Eleuthera and to San Salvador. I think that's it. 5 student trips I did in my time in the Bahamas. Now then, That is the truth. That is reality. I mean, in a different situation, I'd give you the names of all the people that went. I'd say contact accident group. Just contact these people and tell them what happened on Mr. Smith's trip. I can't do that for obvious reasons here. So if you don't believe me, you don't believe me. But that is exactly what happened. You would have thought if something untoward happened, my name would pop up as some kind of predator on a Bahamian, criminal record list. Of course, it doesn't. But this is what Liar Ivor from West Wales actually said about my very worthwhile and actually took a lot of planning and organisation, a lot of good work that I'd done. This is what he said, with no evidence at all, just to cause trouble, just to be malicious, just to discredit me in some way. Ivor's words describing me, he said, the one involved in taking very, very young kids being both male and females, to Europe from Bahamas for weeks on end. I mean, this is just untrue. Why he would make this up, I don't know. The only reason I can think of is because he's lost the argument about Jay Slater having died by accident, and therefore his only recourse, if he can't challenge the message, is to challenge the messenger with defamatory nonsense, hoping to discredit me in the eyes of many so that my message doesn't count. Unfortunately, he's overdone it. He's written such stupid stuff with no evidence that most people, most sane people, not the accident group because they're deluded, um, deluded fools. Most sane people are looking at this saying, well, where does he get that from? Yeah, how would he know that my role at Tambearly School in the Bahamas was taking very, very young kids? I don't know how old very, very young is. Like I say, the senior school were 15 or 16 years old, and junior school, probably 12, 13 years old. Is that very, very young? I mean, maybe some would say Lucy. You're bossing it, gal. Yeah, his best mate, Ivor's best female friend, I would suggest, Lucy, 18 years old. Is that very, very young? Is that a very, very young kid? I don't know his definition of very, very young kid here. We certainly know the implication, we certainly know the innuendo, but I'm going to say those junior school trips, 12, 13 years old, the senior school, 15, 16 years old. Yeah, okay. He's got it right, male and female. Yeah, that's a normal school trip. I don't think, unless it's an exclusively girls' school, exclusively boys' school, you have solely male and solely female trip. I mean, it's possible, but in this case, yeah, they're both male and female. But what's your point? I think that's a normal school trip for weeks on end. Now that's a lie. If he'd called Tambearly School, he could have found out the truth if they'd given him the information. But at no point does Liar Ivor ever try to ascertain the truth. That isn't the point here. And I would suggest that's the point with the way he's approached the whole Jay Slater subject. The point, for example, with LiDAR maps, is never to tell the truth. It's always to insinuate that the other person must be wrong. And the way you do that is creating a whole mesh of lies, fabrications, and nonsense that some very dim-witted people might buy into. I don't know how many people are wealthy enough to go on a trip to Europe from the Bahamas for weeks on end. That isn't normally how a school trip works. It's a taste of 2 or 3 different places, and then you fly back home. So it was a 10-day trip. I wouldn't describe the Europe trip, 10-day trip, as weeks on end. And certainly the long weekend trips we took with the junior school, that's not weeks on end. But all of this is written, like I say, to make you think there's something wrong with the messenger. There's nothing wrong with the messenger. This messenger right now has just come back. Sorry, I'm looking, the worst for wear. Just been doing my morning exercise, the boxing routine, Liar Ivor, when you're ready to get absolutely whipped in the ring, when you're going to be just come on over to the Riviera and we'll do it. You never will do that either. You'll just continue typing away, creating your AI photo of yourself, pretending you look healthy. I think that's a clue you're not in good shape, Liar Ivor. But anyway, yeah, I'm looking the worse for wear here, but that's what you get. This is me. Where is the reality? We have Liar Ivor, who can't even show his real face on camera. None of them can. Remember good old gobshite from Glasgow. Oh no, I can't show you a pic of me in Morocco because I'd be mocked. Well, heavens above. I mean, yeah, when was the last time anyone was mocked in life? Mocking someone? Oh dear, my world would collapse, gobshite from Glasgow. Yeah, when are these people going to get some balls? Actually put their face, their voice out there if they've got a point to be made. Do it, and then we might have some respect for you. But your little keyboard warriors typing away, oh no, we can't debate anything. No, 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 I don't want to say anything. Oh no, no, I can't show my face. This is pathetic. Now, Kaz Alice, you've said, and this is where I need to actually point out how Kaz Alice is even worse than the people she backs, because she knows 100% the truth, but she just won't come out and say it. You will never hear Kaz Alice publicly say, Ivor's got this wrong, Luggy's got this wrong, El Slugtardo is wrong about this. She will never do it in public. Why? Because she's scared. Scared to be cut off from her group, her fake friends. Yeah, let me just give you this example of how Kaz Alice could iron everything out if she wanted to, and she refuses to. We have the contradiction. We have Chris Pennington saying, "Oh yeah, no one could get into the beach at Juan Lopez because the boat has to stay 500 meters away from the shore, and you have the hammerhead sharks, so no one can actually get onto that Juan Lopez beach." You have the same person, Chris Pennington, saying, well, Luggy, he booked a boat for us to go into Juan Lopez Beach because if the Guardia Civil weren't going to retrieve Jay's body, we were going into that beach and do it ourselves. So it is possible to access Juan Lopez Beach, according to Chris Pennington, and it is also impossible to access Juan Lopez Beach, according to Chris Pennington. Now, Chris Pennington, I can't correct what he said. I can only point out that one of those is a lie, and therefore Chris Pennington is a liar. It doesn't matter how many medals he won in Iraq, Peter. It doesn't matter how many managing directorships your son has. He's a liar. One of those is a lie. Now, Kaz Alice has said, oh, Chris Pennington, he's my friend. He's a dear friend. He's honest. He's transparent. He's a wonderful person. Okay. If he's all those things, Kaz, if he's your wonderful, honest, transparent, open friend, but he's clearly told a lie here, why don't you find out which one is the lie and tell the world why he told that lie? I'll give you the answer, Kaz. You can't do it, and you will never do it because you're scared shiteless of losing these fake friends. If you did that, if you went public and said, clearly, Chris Pennington has lied here, and in private conversation with me, he said the lie was that boats can't get into Juan Lopez Beach. He was lying when he talked about the impossibility of traversing those 500 meters with sharks and impossibility of the boat having to be 500 meters. Yeah, if Kaz Alice cleared this up, she'd have some credibility. As a friend, as a connection with these people. She doesn't have any credibility. She won't face what is an obvious lie and clear that up for us. And my point is, Kaz, if you can't clear up an obvious lie from your close friend, Chris Pennington, it makes us think you are part of the whole lying charade here. You abide by lies. You love the lies. You embrace them. It's easy. Clear up the lies, and then you have some credibility. Hide behind the, oh, no, 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 it's not for me to say what the truth is. It is. These are your friends. These are your friends. Just tell us what the truth is. We know they haven't got the bollocks to stand up and say, I made a mistake and I lied. You see, Kaz's point is when these people tell a lie, they're just making a mistake. They're saying something by mistake. Okay, so if this is saying something by mistake, Kaz, you tell me where the mistake is. Your great friend, El Slugtardo from West Wales, about the trips that I organised, and I did a damn good job doing it for kids going to Europe and the other Bahamian islands. He said, referring to me, the one involved in taking very, very young kids. How old were they, Kaz? Did you ever try to find out? Did you ever say to Ivor publicly? Did you write a post underneath it saying, hey, Ivor, knock it off? You got no evidence and this is just defamatory. Have you ever done that? No. So, Kaz, this is a wonderful opportunity for you now to clean that slate, come clean and say, look, these are all my friends. I figured out in conversation with them what is a lie, what is the truth, and I'm now going to present that so that we can all be on board with what is exactly right and what is a load of defamatory nonsense. That's your invitation, Kaz. You won't do it because you're scared shiteless of the consequences of losing your precious fake friends. There was something else I wanted to mention, but I will leave it right there. I'll look more to go through because every time we mention something that Liar Ivor is really on edge about, he posts this nonsense and it's just as a reaction to the truth being put out there. In particular, I don't know if you've noticed this, whenever you call out Jay's Law as being an absolute failure, which it is, then we get the reaction. Then we get the fabrications and the lies and the malicious nonsense. But Jay's Law is an absolute failure. There isn't anything happening in the background. There are no meetings to push this law. The government have given their response that anything anyone objects to in what is proposed in Jay's law has already been covered by online safety bill. That's it. Now, because he doesn't want to lose face, I mean, this was phase 2 or phase 3. This was the big push. This is how the online sleuths and the tragedy trolls were going to be dealt with. Because he's lost face and this has failed, I'm sorry, Debbie Duncan, you were given awful advice by the likes of Pennington and Lovelace. Because he's lost, he has to now pretend that something's happening in the background. All this, shh, don't tell them something's happening. Shh. It's bollocks. Ain't nothing happening. It's a disaster. Jay's law only got 18,000 signatures in parliamentary history for petitions like that. That's pathetic. It's been removed. Sarah Smith has gone silent. There are no more TV media appearances. You, Ivor Lovelace, are a loser. Hasta luego, adios, hasta la vista.